honestly hope that was the first thing they hear.
This is my happy face.
Woohoo!
That's a great opening line. I was watching many of the old TechNow videos and I hear, we're live or we're on air. You know, that was the first thing people would hear. Then we play the music, but that one would be, we could make a t-shirt out of that. This is my happy face.
This is my happy face.
Hello and welcome to TechNow, the web series for ServiceNow administrators and developers. My name is Chuck Tomasi. I am from ServiceNow, and we'll give the more detailed introductions in a second. Joining me across the virtual table, as always, is Craig Stepp. How are you, Craig?
I'm doing great. Good to talk to you, Chuck and Dan.
And we have a special
guest.
Listener,
by the way.
Yes, we have a special guest this time, right from Minnesota, Dan Kane.
Thank you. Yeah, hi. So yes, this apparently this is my happy face fame. Yeah, that's me.
Dan Kane. I loved you in Superman.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What?
Oh wait, I'm sorry. That was Dean Kane. Sorry,
Dean Kane.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone.
No.
Self-incrimination right there. Let us jump into the topic then, shall we? I will do the freeze screen thing and the screen share thing. And if I could, I'd hide all those avatars on the bottom of the screen thing, but we're not there yet. Share your entire screen. Share. And then the PowerPoint thing. Here we go. So the reason we have Dan here is specifically, I'm not sure what just happened there. Okay, do that again. Is specifically for performance analytics. Craig talked about reporting in episodes 42 and 43. And Dan is going to take us the next mile with performance analytics because it's the logic follow-on to that. So before we get into that, if you haven't watched TechNow in the past, we've been going for about 5 years. I think in a couple of weeks is our 5-year anniversary. So congratulations to what I think is one of the longest series about any particular platform on the web. We'll find out if anybody wants to differ for that. But for now, I'll take that claim. I have been working at ServiceNow since 2010. I was a customer for a couple of years before that. And that means I've been doing this almost 10 years. That just blows my mind at how much has happened and we've done. And how much fun I've had out of my 35 years of IT experience. Now, almost a third of it is with ServiceNow, and I'm wishing the whole time was ServiceNow, but that could just be bias at this point. And I have all kinds of platform and integration experience around custom applications and whatnot that I want to share with you so you can make your applications and solutions even better. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Did I skip Craig's slide? Hang on. Oh yeah,
I think it was under hide slide. That's what
Dan is our guest, so Dan goes next.
Right.
Oh, all right. So thank you. Yeah, as I am Dan Kane. I've been with ServiceNow. Actually, you mentioned 5 years ago in a couple of weeks for TechNow. That'd be me with ServiceNow as well. And in just a couple of weeks, I got the 5-year anniversary coming up. So yeah, all right.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So I'll be getting some of the special things that go along with that. But 10 years, wow, that is it was weird when I started being considered an old timer at like 3 years. So
isn't that funny?
Wow, you've been around a long time, yeah.
Now remember, I started with ServiceNow in 2010. So yeah, my experience goes back 10 years. It was a much different company back then, much different product.
That is also true. I was also a customer prior to that. So I was also a customer for a couple of years. So I've, about 20 years in the IT operations space prior to ServiceNow. So I was a practitioner running service desks, doing metrics all over the place. So, and being really active online on IT service management. So I spent a lot of time in that space, blogging, tweeting. Actually, people didn't believe it there for a while, but I say about my first 5 years of being on Twitter, I never once did anything personal. It was all Yeah, I use Twitter exclusively for business, exclusively for professional purposes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's it was kind of odd, but since I started with ServiceNow, now I was a business process consultant for 3.5 years. Yeah, so helping customers at the startup end of trying to make the applications do what their processes needed to do and marrying all that up together, and that was a blast. But I also started working with performance analytics after we bought the tool from after we bought the company Mirror 42. I started getting involved with that as the same month we bought the company. So
you're an old timer in PA terms as well.
From PA terms, unless you're actually a carryover Mirror 42 employee, I am it. So
but since you don't have a Dutch accent, I'm assuming no.
No, I have a Dutch accent. I have to pick it up from time to time, but there's an amazing number of the folks from Mirror 42 that are still here.
Yes.
So I mean, I'd say it's well over half, probably 2/3 or more of the original Mirror 42 folks are still with us, and now the development team has gotten huge over there since then, but over in Amsterdam. But so I do get to run over there a couple times a year. So then the last year and a half has been with the performance analytics and reporting business unit. So actually on the product team, and there is a group of us that is dedicated to the customer interfacing between, so the interface between the customers and the product team. So I come in and help customers who are who are wanting some help in how to see value out of PA. Sometimes pre-consulting services, got to help them understand how to frame their problem statements. That's a lot of what I do with in the PA environment.
It's great
and
to
I'm
have
having
you
a blast.
Thanks.
I could use some help framing some problem statements.
Speaking of problem statements, Craig, do your intro.
Yes, I'm Craig Stepp, and I have been with ServiceNow since 2014, coming up on 4 years. Yes, 4 years, 4 glorious years. That's ServiceNow.
Or as we like to call it, fully vested.
It's fully vested. That's right. I am a curriculum developer in training and certifications, which formerly known as education services. And I maintain our cloud infrastructure that allows these our classes and a lot of the training stuff. If you've been to Knowledge and you've seen any of those workshops, that's my work in the background to make those instances pop up. I don't, of course, configure every lab, but I certainly have a hand in making everything come up. So I have been in orchestration in the PS part of ServiceNow before, and had a hand in our new cloud class that Training and Cert is now offering. And among other things, I always also help other curriculum developers and Training and Cert to do their stuff too. So I am into photography, Linux, and long walks on the beach.
Thank you. Speaking of Knowledge, Craig's claim to fame for orchestrating all that good stuff. Want to remind you that Knowledge 18 is coming up this year. It is in Las Vegas, May 7th through 10th. If you've been watching this series, you've probably heard this ad multiple times, but hey, we're not going to miss an opportunity to tell you one more time that it is a great time to learn, great time to network, great time to get to know the product and nuances. You will be amazed at what you come away with should you go to Knowledge. I highly encourage you to go sign up over at knowledge.servicenow.com. We've got the developer administrator track of that, CreatorCon, which is going to be happening the same day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at this time, which has a hackathon. Craig and Dave and I will be doing 3, this is a record for us now, 3 TechNow sessions every day. We're going to be building onto an application that we're going to take from ground zero to finished product, similar to what we did last year, but in a slightly different take. This is to show what it takes to put together a ServiceNow application. Don't want to get too much into the weeds on that, but there is a lot of cool stuff that's going to be happening. Go check it out. Go over to knowledge.servicenow.com. Dan, you going to be there?
Absolutely.
So if you've got PA questions, study this man's face. You'll want to find him.
Absolutely. I'll be presenting a few of the labs.
Hey, by the way, that picture of John Donahoe looks like
Yeah.
he's walking on people, like everybody.
Really?
I know there's a walkway there, but it looks like he's walking on.
He's Jesus walking on a sea of people.
Right.
It kind of does, yeah.
Okay, now I'm sure we offended someone somewhere. I'm not sure why, but okay, let's go with it. The real quick, I want to get into this so we leave Dan plenty of opportunity to talk about PA, because this may be a two-parter, and I don't know when we'll get to the second part. We were discussing sort of a game plan earlier. But the quick tip for this week are some of the lessons that I've learned in just the few short weeks that we've been using Flow Designer. And what I want to show you is on my developer instance. If I go over to my developer instance and log in, make that just a touch bigger. Yeah, that'll work.
Yep, that's better.
And hopefully I typed that right. Otherwise, the password gods will scold me and tell me to do it again. I am going to go into Flow Designer on my was it safety application? No, it was TechNow 46. I have a scope for this on Porpoise. And what we learned, I was doing an approval. There's Flow Designer, bring up the designer. I was doing an approval, and this is a pretty straightforward use case. You want to get an approval on a task record. And if you were watching us earlier, this should look pretty familiar. We have a trigger that says when the state changes to approval, or TAN, create the activity to ask for an approval. And it asks for the approval. If you look at the details here, the record it gets is the trigger record, which makes sense. If I've got task number 10, let's say, I want to throw in task number 10 from the task table. And then anyone who approves, I get the approver field for that and say, okay, get the field called approver and pull that in. Then it goes down here and says, well, if the approval state, because that's from this activity, it comes with an output of approval state. It's going to say it was approved, it was rejected, it was declined, whatever this output state is. I say, if it was approved, then go and update the task record. Now watch closely at the details of that update, because I'm updating the trigger task record to state closed complete and approval approved. Right? Seems to make sense. What happens when you update a record, Craig? Saves it back to the database, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then I came down here and said, hey, log message, tell me what you think of this record. And it would say, your approval state is still opened, not approved. And it was confusing the jiggers out of me, because ultimately when I get done with my if and my else, here's the else. If it wasn't approved, it will reject it. And I get down to this log statement and say, how did this all turn out? And it would say, your trigger record is open and not approved. And it wasn't rejected either. Like, what? It's still awaiting approval. I thought maybe it was a timing thing. Something was happening asynchronously and my log message was getting printed before the record was updated. That wasn't the case.
Okay.
The case is, I was assuming, that's the dangerous part, that this behaved like many of the other scripting structures we have in ServiceNow, like a business rule. Here's current. Current is a virtual copy of your record as it exists right now, and it's persistent throughout this flow. So if you were doing a workflow and you said current dot state, and I changed it halfway through the flow, not only is current updated, but the database is updated too. That's not the case with Flow Designer. With Flow Designer, once I've updated the trigger record, look where the trigger record is in this data process. It's way back here, or way up here at the beginning. And I'm doing an update down here on step 3 that says, oh, go update the record. And then I'm asking the log message, go back to step 1. I went, what? Huh? No, wait, what? The way you get around this, it's not even a workaround. It is the right way to do it. It's I wouldn't call it a workaround. Is before, can I collapse this? Not move it up. Not that. I'm losing my thought process here. There. Remember we found this tiny little plus in here. Where was it? We were doing one of the TechNows. There it is.
Right there. Yeah.
Tiny little plus. Do an add action and say lookup record, and you take the trigger record. You tell it the table, so the task table from that, and you want the condition. This is pretty overly simplistic once you see it, where the sysid is the task record sysid. So you're just re-getting it from the database.
Yep. Yeah. So you were actually looking at the old record, the previous version of the record.
It's instantiated up there, and I was getting it from up there, but it's not refreshed, which is good and bad if you think about how Flow Designer works. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong at this point. I don't have enough experience. It's just
it's kind of logical, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's different. You just got to remember, if you're doing an update and you want to reference the latest copy of the record, you got to go do a lookup. And you always have that reference to the original trigger record sysid, so you could just pull it that way.
Right.
It may seem, hopefully you're not doing this 100 million times and you're doing a lookup and a lookup and a refresh and a lookup and a refresh and a lookup. That would get a little ridiculous. But I wanted to point that out as a lesson learned so far. Okay, now we resume our regularly scheduled program. Over to you, Dan. Do you want to take over the slides, or you just want to say next slide until we're ready for the demo?
Oh, I can just do next slide.
Okay. And FYI, Craig and I have turned off our cameras for this part, and that allows you to, scratch your ear or whatever you want to do off camera.
Hey, thanks. So, all right. Yeah, so I should do that. Oh, now I got to update that picture.
That's all right.
As I'll say, and he turned the camera off, and now he's 10 years younger.
Before he went in the military.
I don't know if it's 10 years, but it's at least 5. But come on, that's just harsh. So yes, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about reporting versus analytics. So because that's a frequent question that comes up is, what is the difference? What is the difference between reporting and analytics? Why would I use one versus the other? So we'll talk a little bit about that. A little bit about roles and how they can impact what you're doing and how you're working with it. We'll talk about how analytics, kind of the architecture of the platform from an analytics perspective, because it is a little different beast from the rest of the platform. It's not hard. The mantra you hear from me all the time is, it's not hard, but there is some level of detail. It is detail.
Yep.
And then the most fun part of course, is the demo, where we'll actually walk through some of the administrative tools.
I love this.
I'll just leave this up there. I'll give you a moment to read this, but I love this quote, although I still got to fix the tenses in here. Uses a lamppost, so I got to fix that. This is a British poet and philosopher from the 19th century discussing politicians, saying, he uses data, and the actual term was statistics, so it's pretty dang close, actually. He uses data in the way a drunkard uses lampposts, for support rather than illumination.
And that's perfectly suited for performance analytics as well.
Absolutely. Yes, that's because that's the difference here. We are trying to illuminate. Now, that quote is a little harsh on support, because there certainly is a place for us using data to support what we're doing.
Yeah,
absolutely. But performance analytics is all about the illuminating what's actually going on. So, and that's our focus here. So this is just a quick breakdown of some of the differences between the standard platform reporting engine and the performance analytics piece, which is now there is a complementary flavor of performance analytics, but really we're also talking about the premium. So being able to extend just beyond incident management. So with reporting, we really, the big difference is reporting is a snapshot at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you run that report, what's the status of that data, the information on it? Now I run a report to tell me here's the way things look right now. Oh, okay, now it's 5 seconds later. It's different now. Okay, the report is now old.
Right.
So it's not, so it's real time in the sense you can refresh real time as much as you want, but it is just a single snapshot. Performance analytics, on the other hand, has a snapshotting engine that takes a series of snapshots over time. So it's not just, I have a snapshot of the way things look today. I have the snapshot of the way things looked yesterday, another snapshot of the way things looked the day before, and then I can compare that over time. So that's really some of the big differences. From a visual perspective, one of the big differences that people love with performance analytics is the multiple data series. So with reporting, it really is just one data series, one data set. With performance analytics, I can be comparing metrics or KPIs across any number of data sets, any number of other indicators, multiple series within. So I can be comparing my incident creation rate against my change success rate on the same chart. I mean, they also that's a big difference. Formulas, another big difference. I have a pretty robust formula support within performance analytics, so I can generate calculated formulas on the fly when a dashboard loads. Targeting, comparing against targeting, trigger alerts and against some thresholds, so I can be told that, hey, it's giving me some context. So hey, you've reached you now have 8 critical incidents open, which compared to the at first blush might not look so bad, but that's 8 is the highest number we've ever had. That's that's a record. So let's do some alerts around there being a threshold that's just been breached. Main purposes, we've got automated recurring information. So the idea is analytics is not an exploratory. It's not as much exploratory. It's saying these are goals that we have as a business, and here's what we're going to measure to help us determine whether or not we're meeting those goals and what we can change, what levers we can pull to try to better reach our goals. So that's really what performance analytics does versus, and the other way, when we talk about reporting, to me, it's status reporting. It's a status of what's happening. Okay, we can move on from there. I like this slide. This just because I like to make the point that, especially as admins, and that's the primary audience here, we want to look at performance analytics. While it is an application, it really is a core part of the platform. It rests on top of it's something that you rest on top of the system database, and it applies to every application, every table. So it really is when we're talking about analytics, we're talking about the application, talking about reporting, we're talking about using metrics. And in this case, I'm talking about the metrics functionality, not metric being a KPI. It requires, the way you develop your applications impact your analytics, and your analytics can impact the way you develop your applications. So the idea is that these all interact with each other. And as a process guy, I had to throw in that, by the way, there's also business processes that have impact on this. So we need to develop our processes with the idea of what analytics or what questions that we want to answer. We need to have those questions in mind as we develop processes as well. So just a quick look. So next, traditional, I'd like to compare contrast of versus traditional BI as well, because there's frequently that point of, well, I have this BI tool that we ETL everything out to this massive data lake, data warehouse, and so I have an application developer or an analytics developer that works with that data warehouse data, and the only interface they have to the rest of the business is they are told by the process or service managers what it is that they want to see. Okay, a process manager, an incident manager says, I want to see this on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and so forth. Analytics developer figures out a way to dig into that data and make it work, that massive data pool. The only interfaces then that the service and process managers have with the data itself is at the application development. They tell the app devs, what fields do I need on my form? What scripts do I need? What business rules need to run?
Yep.
and then they in turn interface with the sysadmins if they are different people. But the whole idea is that it's a very linear process. There really isn't any any sense of one purpose in the whole thing. We're all just each other's customers, but it's only but it's all very linear. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide then. From performance analytics, we really want to look at it from the perspective of really this is a team sport. We're all in platform. Everything's in platform. So we need a team of people that are the developing dashboards, writing scripts potentially that would perform some of the calculations we need, or some of the more advanced querying that we need. Application developers for a lot of that. What do we need? What fields do you need on your forms? But the idea is that we're all talking together. So, so they ask the questions here about who performs the tasks. Instead of having to go up and down the linear string the whole time, the idea is we have a team that works together that says we need developers, we need sysadmins, we need people who develop the visualizations. It's all in platform. It's all working with the same records. It's all working with the same forms. So we want to work together, and that's a
huge difference, as you see in a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
A moment for me.
Yeah, team sport. Architecture. This is now as a geek, this is one of my favorite slides.
Absolutely.
As admins, this may be as well. This is the slide we use when I do workshops with the business folks that I use just to kind of intimidate them into submission. But it really isn't that hard. We start from architecture as we have the ServiceNow tables, we have all the task tables, we have all the system tables, sys-choice, users. From those tables, what we do with performance analytics is we collect scores, or we collect data sources, we collect data sets through this process called data collection, and we define those through indicator sources. What the indicator source does is it just says, look into the source tables and run a query, and pull me a data set that I can put in memory, and just put it in temporary memory so that I can do something with that data set. And that's what the next stage of the thing is. So the doing something is putting that data set into a score, and the score is the performance analytics indicator. So the indicator source and then the score. The indicator is how I define the score. So it's what I want to do with that data set. The data set tells me that there were 350 incidents resolved yesterday. What do you want to do with that? Do you want to just count that? Do you want to give me the average amount of time that it took to resolve each of those 350? Do you want to count how many that were resolved by a specific group? That's what the indicators do. The indicators say, I've got a data set. Now what do I want to do with it to create a score?
And at first, this may seem like an odd level of abstraction, but it allows you to use the same indicator source for multiple purposes.
Right. Exactly.
So let me ask: is it kind of like if you had a search engine and it was looking at a bunch of text to index it, so it knew those indexes, I guess, would be like indicators to the data. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yes, it is somewhat similar to that. Yeah. The idea then is, I am pre-populating a series of pre-populating tables that hold scores. So it is kind of like an indexing. But one of the really big points from this is that I'm not actually drawing my scores. I'm not actually drawing my scores directly from the production tables, from the operational tables. I'm actually drawing my score from from this population of a scores table through the data collection process, just a batch job that runs.
Right.
Another abstraction of the indicators are the breakdowns. So, and that just add that at this level. So we're defining other ways that we want to work with that data set. So that when I talked about things like, who resolved an incident in that set of 350 resolved incidents. Who resolved them? What were the categories of them? That's the way that we break down our data, or that we want to do the slicing and dicing of the data. And they all come up to as scores again. So we get a score that says, here's a count of those 350 resolved incidents. 27 of them were resolved by the network administration team.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 27, let's say 15 of them were in the WAN category. 10 of them, however many of them were in the were in the data center category. But the whole idea is that we slice and dice this data, starting from an initial score, from that initial data set, all the way through an indicator, and then we also apply breakdowns to those indicators. And that makes up the data layer. So what the data layer ultimately does is it takes all this information and puts it into a scores table. Then the visualization layer are the widgets and the dashboards. So what we get here is taking the data that we've received from these indicators. So the indicators have a score. There were 27 resolved incidents by the network administration team. And then how do you want to visualize that? So when we're actually visualizing a widget, when we actually have a widget on the screen, we're not pulling data directly from the operations tables. We're not causing any sort of performance hits against the operational tables at that point in time. We're just pulling the scores directly from these pre-collected scores through the indicators and breakdowns. All right. I have just a quick and dirty on how to build a KPI. This is actually very well documented in the doc site, so I want to call that out. But this is, customers have found, when I work with customers, one of the things that they like best is just to get a simple checklist.
Mm-hmm.
So I give them this simple checklist that says, I want a score. I want to create a KPI. I want to create that holds a score of some sort. So how do I do that? And because it can be kind of confusing when you look at the whole performance analytics menu to say, where do I start?
Yeah, there's a lot of.
So we'll talk about some of these as we go through some of the demo, but we need a plan. So what is the question you're trying to answer with this indicator? Are you trying to figure out why so many incidents stay open longer? Is that what you're trying to figure out? Are you trying to figure out which types of changes tend to generate the most outages during the change process? I mean, that's the idea, is like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? From there, then we have to have an indicator source, which generally is going to be, remember, that's your data set, but it's what table am I pulling data from? Am I pulling data from my change table? Am I pulling it from my incident table? Am I pulling it from a database view that combines incidents and metrics together? Important note on this is the date parameter.
Mm-hmm.
One of our mantras from the PA world is dates, not states. We must include a date parameter. So when we're saying, what I mean by that is, when we're saying we have a data source or an indicator source that is looking at incidents that were resolved, we need to say incidents resolved on a specific date. That date could be a single day. That date could be a week. That date could be a month. But it's what we want to get out of that is, resolved when, open when. That's what we're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah, rather than just saying incidents that are open or incidents that are closed.
Yep. Because at any given time, if I'm just looking at incidents that are open, that's going to, that what's open right now is very different than what was open 2 weeks ago.
True.
Right.
So I can run collections for today, yesterday, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, etc. And if I'm using date parameters rather than states, I can still get an accurate count of what was open 6 months ago, what was open 3 months ago, based upon looking at the open date, the resolve date, and possibly the close date of an incident. I'll know exactly what was open each day historically, and that's what we're looking for here.
That's important.
That's really important. That's a very important concept. Yeah, exactly. So once we have a source, we create an indicator, which is just the definition of what I want to do with the data set. Now, the one I forget all the time, adding an indicator to a job.
Yep.
I'll create my indicator. I'll create a job, and then I'll forget to create a batch job that I'll actually forget to say, oh, by the way, I wanted this indicator to be collected with this job. We run jobs. Generally, we run jobs overnight for 1 day at a time. That can be modified, that could be configured, but that's the general perspective. And then once we've run the job, we have our scores table populated. We create widgets. The widgets then get updated with whatever the latest scores are on an ongoing basis. They get automatically updated. So one of the greatest benefits of this is many companies are getting rid of their monthly PowerPoint deck. Say, here's my monthly stats from everything that went on. Instead, I could just say, here's our dashboard.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I can see that dashboard getting updated on a daily basis instead of having to wait until the 15th of the following month to figure out what happened this month. I can actually see what's going on really on a day-to-day basis.
We got to find a way to hook this into financial systems so we can have month-end close a lot closer to the month-end.
Well, and I think there's a lot we can do with that, to be fair. There really is. All right, well, let's demo.
Yeah.
Let's get into the demonstration.
I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yep.
Stop my screen sharing.
And I want to share.
I'll make sure it's locked onto your screen. Appreciate the patience of our viewers.
Oh, there we go. Screen share. I'll do my entire screen. What the heck? I'll live dangerously. All right. Now we should have my test ServiceNow instance up.
I'm looking at the guided setup now. Yep.
Beautiful. Technology is a wonderful thing.
When it works.
I've said for many years when I was in IT operations, I used to tell my family all the time I love the fact that technology is not perfect. We have a house over our head and food to eat every night at dinner.
But you're going to say, I tell my family, if you need me, file an incident.
Yeah, because technology doesn't work perfectly. So when something wrong happens in your computer, be thankful. No, they didn't buy that. They didn't. So I am working. So the instance I'm working with is actually a Kingston instance, and there's a few things I want to really show, particularly from an administrative perspective. So keep in mind our core objects that we were interested in we talked about indicator sources, which is our data sets. We talked about indicators, which are the automated indicators, which is how we define the scores that we're going to collect from those data sets. We have breakdowns, which is a way to further break down the scores. These are, our core pieces. And then we have dashboards.
Dan, can you bump that font size up just a little bit?
No. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I may also just zoom a little bit here too.
That's what we need. Yep.
How's that?
Nice. Much better. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So the most exciting part, of course, is getting to the dashboards. The unexciting part that as administrators we really do care about, though, are things like, I'll just scroll down here into our jobs and job logs. So we care about the job is where I define what gets collected when. Job logs are going to tell me when good and bad things happen during that process.
Usually what logs are good for, yeah.
Yeah, they're very good for that. And I've got a couple of errors here, which is, of course, on purpose, because to make a point, I didn't just make errors on my own. But what I really wanted to show you, show the administrators here, are a couple of pieces that are new, starting with Jakarta and then also with Kingston. We have what's called the guided setup, which is actually an administrator tool. It is not intended for your standard performance analytics users. There's a role called PA administrator or PA admin within the tool, within the platform. And within that role, I have control over everything within the performance analytics application, all the modules in here. I can even see the guided setup. What guided setup does differently and why it needs to be an administrator is because the guided setup will actually walk me through things like enabling plugins if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it. And the PA admin role is not allowed to do that. So breathe easy. But the PA admin role can create indicator sources. They can do some scripting. One of the cool things about scripting within PA is it stays, anything you can script within PA stays within PA. So as a PA admin, I can't write scripts that are against other system tables. All I can do is write scripts that impact my ability to create an indicator or a breakdown. So it's a nice little walled garden here for so we don't necessarily need system administrators to be running as the PA admins at all times. But I digress.
You're gonna walk us through a start to finish scenario where we've got like raw data and then we'll create an indicator.
Yeah, we could do that. So
all right,
where we've got some of the scenarios. Well, I wanted to, I want to do kind of briefly here is show the outcome of how we got kind of the deconstruct from a. Let's go look at one of our out of the box. We have 80 some out of the box dashboards, 450 plus out of the box KPIs. So so everything I'm showing you here is what's available out of the box, assuming that you activate the correct plugins. And that's what we'll get to the plugins in just a moment here. But I have an example here is I've got a dashboard it's called a workbench widget here on this dashboard. So it's a lot more complex, but it's for an incident process owner to help. If I'm an incident process owner, I need to understand what's going on in my environment right now. So it gives me a ton of information in one pane of glass in a way that is to be functional for a process owner, the sort of things that they're going to be interested in. So in this case, it's showing me everything that's open in my environment. And then I've got my groupings by what their current states are. So like right now it highlighted here, what's on hold. So I know that, so that's already applying a breakdown. So what's being applied here is an indicator, which is the number of open incidents. That's all of these combined together. That's one indicator. And then one breakdown applied to that indicator. So the breakdown being the state to say that's new, what's in progress, what's on hold, what's awaiting user. So I don't have to create a different KPI for each one of these. It's just what's open and what state are they in. Then within this, now, and let's see, let me get another one here that I wanted to show you. This is not an out-of-the-box dashboard, but it uses out-of-the-box KPIs just for something simple here. Like I have a widget that gives me my incident age versus backlog. So I've got two different indicators here. The average age of my open incidents in days and the actual backlog, the number of open incidents over time. So if I want to look at what goes into any of these, I'm going to edit my widget here. And this is stuff you just got to play with. So, but if I edit the widget with my pencil, it'll tell me, okay, here's the indicator that I'm working with. How am I displaying it? I'm displaying it as a time series. I'm going to visualize that time series as an area chart. I can give it a different label than the indicator name if I want to. I can even apply different color schemes if I want to. Then I can, so lots of different options, and these options will all change depending upon what type of widget and what visualization that you're applying. So in this case, since it's a time series, it says, well, what is your time series period? I want to display 3 months. I can also say that, but I want my user to be able to select that. So when I have on my widget here, I'm going to just briefly show the difference here that I just made a slight change to the widget. I'm going to get the ability now, and let's see if my internet connection is going to be behaving. I get the ability to, if I want to, then I could change I could change. Right now, the default is I'm looking at a 3-month window, 3-month history, but I could change that history to be looking at different dates. So
we're pushing the limits with the video streaming.
Maybe I am, yeah. So, but anyway, but I wanted to the main point I wanted to get from that, and is come on, where's my is the fact that I have just an indicator that's giving me that information, number of open incidents.
Yeah.
So I've got that indicator, number of open incidents. I have a list of indicators. Most of these are out of the box indicators in my demo system. So I have my number of open incidents is one of my indicators, and that came from automated indicators. Number of open incidents is just where I get, and again, this is what I'm doing with the indicator, is just defining what score, or how I'm going to get a score out of a data set.
Mm-hmm.
So it's telling me, I get a description. Is it good or bad if this number goes up? That's what the direction says. So it says, I prefer it if this number goes down, number of open incidents. But most importantly is our source of information. So this is the data set I'm pulling from to say, show me the indicator source is based upon all incidents that are open. Then what do you want to do with that data set? I want to count them. If I wanted to, though, I could also do things like summing the reassignment counts of all of those incidents that were open as of the collection date. So I can do lots of different things with this. But the most basic is I want to count it. I can also add so right now we have that data set that says, show me all the open incidents, but I can also add additional conditions. So let's say I wanted a separate indicator that gave me all the open incidents that haven't been updated in the last 30 days. I can do that I can still reuse. So Chuck talked about the ability to, we can reuse. I can reuse that same indicator source for multiple indicators just by making very slight modifications in the properties of the indicator. So if I look at my list here, I'm going to discard what I've done here. And you notice if I look for everything that uses the incidents.open source, so that's that data set, I have 11 of my indicators use that. The average age, number of incidents not updated in the last 30 days, number not updated in the last 5 days. So all this summed reassignments of open incidents, all of them use the same data set, the same indicator source.
And is that the same source when you're looking at the new reporting engine where you can pick a table or a data source? Is
yes.
it talking to an indicator source? Okay, so in effect, it's like a predefined filter.
Right.
So people don't have to go and say, pick a table. Well, a lot of people don't know what table. I mean, there's 2,000 tables in the system.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
You can now predefine the indicator sources to help those people build standard reports as well as feed into performance analytics indicators.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to with the reporting engine. We wanted to be able to leverage what we're using. With and so this is looking at that indicator source, incidents that are open. With that indicator source, we're just defining things like what frequency are we going to? We're going to look at incidents open on a daily basis. You'll notice here we also, I was going to say that it's similar, it has some similarities to report sources. You can use a predefined report source to define your indicator source.
Getting a little meta.
Yeah, so it's I know it's it's kind of it's a little inception going on here.
Yeah. Reportception.
It's a source inside of source, but you have to keep that stuff in mind. But in this case, it's just saying simply, my sources, I have incidents, I'm working with my incident table. And again, this could be any table in the system, any database view, starting with Kingston and being developed even further. We're going to have the ability to work with external data sets as well. I'll just mention that in passing now. That's probably a good one for one of your follow-up, more advanced shows there, Chuck. Getting into some of the externals. But all I'm saying here is what conditions need to be met for this data set? And you notice it's not, and we said already before, remember we said dates, not states. This is an indicator source. This is probably the best example of it, except we don't care about this created by demo. What I do care about is I'm looking for date conditions. So I'm looking for anything that is opened on today or before today. And the resolve date is empty, or the resolve date is after today, which is my favorite to talk about with people who don't work a lot with databases, because they look at that and say, how can anything possibly be after today to be resolved? Yeah, well, because keep in mind what we're doing here is we're creating a source that can be applied for any date. So the idea is I could run a historical collection for the last 90 days. What's going to happen is each one of those days in that 90-day cycle is going to be one iteration of this query being run.
Right.
So it basically applies today in place of the date you're collecting for. So if I go back to sometime in November 1st will be when I'm doing the collection for November 1st, it'll put November 1st in here.
Yeah, for the developer friends among us, think of this as a function definition, and the dates I pass in are the parameters. So like you said, November 1st is going to be what, quote unquote, today is. And this is going to run the same way. It's not just run once a day, and here's what is today. Today is January 25th. And today is January 26th. This has, and often want to do this, is run a historical job to go and collect the information from those historical records. And now you've got some backstory to your analytics. You don't have to wait 3 months before you can actually show somebody a decent report.
So, and I can then, one of little things here that are helpful, I can also then run a preview to say, based upon the condition as it sets here right now, what's going to be my output? What's my outcome?
Yep.
And I can drill into that to make sure, just to ensure that these records are indeed the ones that I wanted to pull. So that's fairly straightforward. So I have my indicator source, which populated. I'm going to leave that. Which populated the scores that I defined through my automated indicators. So we have the data source, we have the indicators. I want to talk about the jobs from here too. So I've got my indicator. Remember, you talked about number of open incidents. And actually, that was one of the things I was going to do with this. Number of open incidents indicator. So this was the indicator we were looking at a few minutes ago. And I'm saying the count I'm doing on it here. But you'll also notice I have this thing called breakdowns. So the breakdowns is saying, what are the ways that I want to slice and dice this data? I want to be able to do that. So these are all defined breakdowns. So the idea is that we're predefining the ways that we're going to slice and dice the data. So when a score is collected, a score not only gives me the count of everything that's open, it says, give me a count of everything that's open and a count of everything that's open by the different age options, by the different priority choices, tiers, business services, and so forth. So we can just keep adding these breakdowns to help define the data. And this is what really makes this, I think breakdowns are what really make performance analytics a very powerful tool. Between that and the snapshotting on a daily basis. Yeah. We've got the ability to be able to slice and dice data without having to run a new query, without having to, without having to create a new KPI. We have lots of different ways to look at the data. So I defined these breakdowns against the indicator number of open incidents. So I want to just make that point. So what it gets from here is I wanted to show. I like to show this for the admins as well. I get a listing. I have related links to the scores for this indicator. So what that'll tell me is for this indicator, and these are old. This is old data. So you can go ahead and razz me. This is older data, and it's going to show me what the raw score was for those historical days and what the score was by all of those breakdowns.
Nice.
So yeah, I like this. I don't show this to the end users, but this is a nice way to kind of troubleshoot if I'm not seeing what I'm expecting in my data collection. What the end users are really going to be interested in are the dashboards, but then also from here, we have the scorecards. What a scorecard. So the scorecard is just a different way, a more business-friendly way of looking at that raw data.
Yep.
So it's giving me the historical information, but I also have a link to go look at this 151 open incidents based upon the different breakdowns, the breakdowns that have been applied. Who owns the different, which assignment groups own these? What are the states of the open incidents? Oh man, I have a lot. Look at this. Awaiting, on hold, awaiting.
Yeah.
That's not good. This is actually older data. Huh?
We need somebody to chase those down.
Yeah, we do. So, but ultimately what we got though was our dashboard. Remember, all that goes into my dashboard where I see I'll wait for that to load again. I won't wait for that to load again, where I saw my number of open incidents. Gotta figure out, because the other pages are all loading really well. There's usually means there's something on, oh, nope, it's coming. Okay, it's going there. Let's all get to my number of open incidents, which is the blue area on this chart. And within these, I can drill down on any given date. That was April 17th. April 17th, that's what date I clicked on.
Yep.
And I have the same scorecard view. You can see what those records were. And what I get is the real-time status of those 25 records. These records were open on the 25th of April, the 17th of April, 2016. Yep. But they may or may not be open now. So this is giving me what the current status is, and I can drill into each one of those and get the detail. So so we have access to all that real-time information. And so
very cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. It is very cool.
As we come down to our last couple of minutes, what are the messages you'd like to send somebody off with?
The big thing I want to send you off with is start running jobs. So there are a bunch of out-of-the-box jobs here. So the out-of-the-box jobs, and I'll show you, kind of an example of these here. These are a bunch of out-of-the-box jobs. The ones that are all daily data collections. If mine's active is set to false, turn those on. That's the number one thing. Turn those on. If you have not activated content packs yet, activate those as well. Activate any content pack. There's a content pack for each application that you use within the platform. So there's a content pack for incident. There's a content pack for change. There's a content pack for HR, content pack for customer service management. If you use that application in the platform, activate the content pack. And those are all plugins. And
it won't cost you anything. The stuff that costs you something extra, you can't activate by yourself. So don't worry about that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What, if you can say real quick, what do you get as far as licensing the product?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. What do you get?
So when you license a product, of course, you can make your own indicators and everything.
Exactly. Everything when you're just using the complimentary version, all you get the ability to do is modify the dashboards based on the out-of-the-box incident metrics. Now, there's a lot of good incident metrics in there, but you can do whatever you want to with the dashboards for the existing KPIs. So with the license, you get the ability to add new KPIs, work with all the different applications, do all the scripting that I mentioned in passing.
By turning it on, you not only start collecting the information and putting together those default incident reports and whatnot, the dashboards, but you can also learn the architecture of how these things are put together and look at, is this something that might be valuable to our other processes, be they IT or line of business or something else entirely?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's what it's there. So the idea is to activate them and start running them. What can be intimidating is that if I activate and start running jobs, and I start looking at the logs, I'll start seeing errors.
Uh-oh.
And this is a big, and I won't say it's a nothing burger, but it's not hurting anything in the rest of the platform. It's one of the great things about PA. It is really completely segmented while it uses the system records, the platform records, the actual work that PA does when it does these collections with errors, for example. I've got an error. Oh no, that's okay. There's some actually pretty easy ways to troubleshoot the errors, and you're not hurting anything else. All we're doing is telling you that, hey, there was something that isn't working with your data against our predefined indicators.
The other advantage that we kind of glossed over quickly, I know we're going over time, but I think this is very valuable stuff. If you turn it on, you will find any issues you have with data consistency. So you may not be capturing, say, the resolve date in all cases that you should, in which case, your system administrator, most analytics people freak out and go, oh my gosh, why don't we have a resolve date? And the system administrator goes, oh, I can fix that with a UI policy.
Exactly.
30 seconds, you're done. So close that issue. But you won't discover those. By turning it on now, you can start to get ahead of some of those things.
Yeah, like some of our, there's a lot of data quality is the number one piece that I work with clients. Every single client that I have implemented performance analytics with, and there's been 50 to 60 or so, we always find some kind of data quality issue within the first day or so of activating.
Yeah.
So, and this is when we talk about illumination rather than support, illumination is often turning on the light so the cockroaches go scattering. and we need to go find them. So, and I know we're running short on time here, but I just wanted to make a quick note. This is a kind of a quick ad for Kingston. Kingston added this piece called the admin console within performance analytics. So it actually tells you when you've got failed jobs, what the usage is like, and gives you some guidance as to how to resolve the issues in those jobs.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's very, very cool. But also utilization, and how we can configure it. So it's all the information's always been there, but it's not, hasn't been nearly as easy to work with. So if I look at my jobs, it'll tell me what's failed, and it can give me some ideas. If I look at the failed jobs and give you some ideas of, hey, how might you fix this? So that's very cool. So I just wanted to give a quick plug for that. This started with Kingston, the admin console.
Good stuff. We'll definitely be circling back with you. I'm going to flip back to the last of the slide decks. That up and
falling. Oh, okay.
The top takeaways again, turn it on. You can't go wrong. You're gathering information, you're finding data quality issues, you're gathering information for future value presentations. As you said, dates not states. That should be, you know what, Dan? That should be a button that we have at Knowledge. That's one of our buttons for next year is dates not states.
I think you're right.
And then, of course, find those data consistency. If you want to find out more information, there's the usual sites, the doc site, YouTube. I know Dan has done presentations on performance analytics on the ServiceNow support channel, as well as the community. So there's lots of good material out there. And of course, you can always ask us and we'll get you the right people for the right resources. Good stuff. There's our contact information. If you want to reach out to us with any ideas or topics or discussions, yada, 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 turn on cameras because we're going to smiley face our way out of this thing.
That's right.
This is my happy face. Remember that.
Turn on the screen sharing. Let me stop presenting. Hopefully we're getting back on camera here somewhere. Got to unlock
So if you're ever in a meeting with Dan and you see a face like this, you know where you stand with him.
You know what can be had.
It's fun because I'm taken much more seriously now that I've Now that I've gone for the shaved head look.
Really? Is that a serious thing?
Semi, I'd say. I've gotten some folks saying that, oh man, now I wouldn't have bugged you with stuff in the past if I knew if
you
you
had
looked
hair?
like that. And, no, if you didn't have hair.
And then you go for the goatee and you look even more sinister. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again, Dan, for being our special guest, and I suspect you are going to be back.
Excellent. I would love to do it.
Way more to be said on performance analytics.
Oh, yeah.
We're just scratching the surface.
And thank you, Craig, for hanging out with us again.
Yes. And by the way, I see no questions. So,
yep, I didn't either. There was one comment in there when we were talking about when technology works, and Pretam said, truly said. So I
fed my family for 20 years. So, yeah.
I wish everybody all the best and take care. Bye now.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you.